my story as becoming a filmmaker is kind of very long. When I came to this country, I was 22 years old. I didn't have any college education, so for next probably 12 or 13 years, I had to work blue-collar jobs and go to school in the evening. After I got my graduate degree, I was able to start teaching, and I've been teaching for the last 10 years, and I love teaching, especially film and screenwriting in different media classes. First time I picked up a camera was in the 90s, maybe late 90s, because I was studying photography, and I was thinking about becoming a professional photographer, and I did actually have a job for 7 days at Kmart portrait studio for a minimum wage, and that was one of the worst jobs I ever had. Actually, it was much easier to work in a steel mill where I spent several years. Then I picked up a video camera sometimes in 2002, 2003, and kind of fell in love with not only with video camera, but I shot my first short films in 16mm film. Johnny Wu, Robert Banks, and 4 or 5 other people were sort of pioneers of film, Cleveland film, independent underground film movement back in the 90s. I took a lot of workshops from them actually, and again, a little bit through college education, a little bit on the side by myself. That's how I learned filmmaking, and it kind of progressed from there. And kind of exploded when I entered the graduate program at Chapman University in Los Angeles, where I had a chance to meet great professors, David Ward, who wrote The Sting from 1970s, and who wrote Major League, Alexandra Rose, who was an Oscar-nominated producer for Norma Rae. Even making a 48-hour film, which I've done a few times myself, is pain. So now multiply that pain by 10 or 15 or 20, and you'll eventually finish a feature film. And especially when we are talking about stuff that's micro budget, or some people call it zero budget, because it is eventually, it is a zero budget because you are investing your time, your money, and there is no guarantee that any of that will ever come back in financial terms. What comes back is this notion that you actually accomplished something. You created a piece of art, and you should be proud of that. And even if it's only a 48-hour film, you should be proud of that. You said we didn't win any awards. It really doesn't matter. You had a public show, did you? They screened it on a big screen. That's an achievement right there. Because how many people can say that they had a public show in a theater? Not too many people. So even by doing those things, you kind of proving that you are an artist. You don't have to be always financially compensated for that. I mean, if you're looking for money, then you should become an attorney or a doctor or a construction contractor or something like that. It's something that actually makes money. But this is art / business when we are talking about mainstream filmmaking, which is completely different set of different outcomes. And the money plays a huge role, as we know, and the money is always difficult to find. I mean, yes, sometimes you can apply for some grants if you're making a documentary, usually, but when you're making a narrative fiction film, it's completely different. It's very, very difficult, and unless you personally know somebody who's very rich and financially independent and likes you, it's almost near impossible to find serious financing for even so-called ultra-low budget film. When I say ultra-low budget film, that's actually $200,000 to $250,000 in terms of how Screen Actors Guild defines it. Everything starts with screenwriting. If you don't have something quality on paper, you're not going to have a movie. Everything starts with an idea, number one, and then you develop that idea into something called an outline. So you have sort of a little bit extended idea in your mind and on the paper, what type of story this is, who's the protagonist, who's the antagonist, what are the obstacles, what's happening in the beginning, what's happening in the middle, how it's going to end. So once you develop that idea and put it in the form of an outline, then we can talk about some serious planning to do some serious writing that can take several months. If it's let's say it's a feature film, it can take for a first draft it can take several months. Then you go to a second draft and it's another month or two, and then a third draft. You probably went through that recently, actually. So if you really want to end up with a quality 100 pages script, it might take a full year to do that. Yes, some people can explode and do that in much shorter period. Like anybody heard of Joe Esterhaus, who was one of the highest paid screenwriters in history, made millions of dollars actually while he was working in Hollywood back in the 80s and early 90s. He claims that actually the Showgirls he wrote in as little as 12 days. And he actually, and he did heavy research in Vegas by going to strip clubs, and then writing down notes. You know, I mean, everybody has a different way of doing it. Everybody has a different way of doing a research, obviously, and you have to do a heavy research, especially if it's some type of sophisticated subject. You know, let's do some historical drama, for example, and even if you are very familiar with it, you still have to do a lot of research, and it takes a lot of time. Lance Black, one of also very successful Hollywood writers, he does research in a very unusual way. He goes through all these magazines and papers, and then he collects all of this paperwork, and he has huge closets in his room, in his office. When you open one closet, it might be only for the first act, and all these boxes with all kinds of paperwork, and then he goes through these notes, carefully written notes, and it can fill the entire room before he even starts writing anything, because his idea is to know this story and know these characters so good that once he sits down, it's just gonna go like this without any doubt, without questioning himself. Okay, what would this character do in this situation? He already knows that, and it's much easier. I see a lot of groups on social media and people commenting and people trying to become screenwriters. And sometimes I read comments, sometimes it's very annoying to read comments, as you know, because everybody knows everything. Not only about screenwriting. Everybody, nowadays, if you go on social media, everybody knows everything about science, about politics, about religion. Everybody knows everything. And then you read first 4 or 5 comments, and then you just have to get a drink and disappear, you know, from the computer, because it's just very, very different idea of the world we live in. But you will find a lot of wrong information on social media, even in screenwriting groups, especially if those are those huge groups with 10,000 members, so everybody's accepted. And then some people will say, well, just go on Amazon and buy, you know, 1 book and 2 books, and in a week you are a screenwriter and you can write your feature film in the next 2 weeks. Well, okay, let me read maybe first 5 pages of the script, and I'll have an idea, you know, what kind of screenwriter you are, because it will show in first 5 to 10 or 15 pages. It will show right there. It's a very difficult process. You said you've written several novels, and did you switch to screenwriting recently or a long time ago?
Yeah, I just started. Yeah.
Do you like it? Is it easier or somehow different than novel writing?
It's completely different, but it's familiar, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like I already understand dialogue and character development and plot progression.
Exactly.
But taking the scene and the descriptions that you get to put down are so sparse.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most minimal thing, and you don't get any of the internal monologue that the characters there, unless you're calling that out as like a different thing. You have to work a lot harder, I think, to get.
But I think you have an advantage. You do have an advantage because you are a writer, you know, before becoming screenwriter. So yes, you know how to develop characters, which is very, very important. You know, how to invent characters and then develop characters. even dialogue, you know. So what you have to probably learn in screenwriting is really good formatting, and this idea of showing the audience or telling the audience only what they can see on the screen, you know, because you really can't go into the mind of that character. That's novel. You can spend 2, 3, 4, 5 pages describing what's happening in the head of this character, what kind of dreams, what kind of emotions. In screenwriting, unless it's some kind of surreal, very visual film, you can't really go into the brain of that character, unless it's Stranger Things, and then you just go on. Lately I'm making a lot of fun of Stranger Things because I'm not really a huge fan for some reason. But yeah, the screenwriting is pretty much writing only what camera can actually show to the viewer, you know, and knowing that one page approximately is 1 minute on screen, plus minus, you know, who knows how many seconds, depending obviously who is directing that film. Different directors will approach it in a different way. Some minimalist directors will go pretty much exactly 1 page, even less, and then if you have a 100-page script, might be 90-minute, 95-minute film. Some other directors who are very visual and pay a lot of attention to their mise-en-scène and their composition, like Stanley Kubrick, for example, they'll take 1 page and make 2 minutes. In the 90s and 2000s, everything became fast-paced and a lot of different cutting. So now we have a generation of kids that can sit through a program unless it cuts to another shot every 5 seconds or less, which to me is ridiculous, because that doesn't define a quality of the movie, okay? How fast it is. And unfortunately, I see that with a lot of my students too, who are coming from that generation that was born into this post-MTV digital revolution of fast-paced editing. And when I ask them to write a review of a movie, many of them will, again, unfortunately say, well, it was too slow. What kind of description is that? It was too slow. How's your life, you know? Are you running through your house 24/7, like, you know, jumping around? Sometimes it's too slow. You sit down, have a drink, couple hours. That's a life. Not everything is jumping and running around, but see, that's that media literacy that's very artificial and developed in the last 10, 15 years, that everything has to be so fast. Not really. So what do you have to do as a screenwriter? You have to obviously ask yourself, what type of movie I want to write? Maybe you want to make something that's super mainstream, fast-paced, like that, because they told you that that's what makes money. And yes, they're right for the most part, because if you look at the Cinemark schedule or some of these commercial theaters, what's playing, probably 90% of stuff is action, horror, comedy, fast-paced action, fast-paced horror, fast-paced comedy, and maybe 5 to 10% is a historical drama. That's a 2-hour-long slow movie that spends a lot of time on character development, and I don't see anything bad with it. Maybe that those 5% or 10% films are actually winning awards and getting really good reviews from film critics, while these other ones are just about money, okay? And unfortunately now we have only franchises, we have only comic books, we have only stuff that's reserved for the club of writers that are already established. So we are in a bad position as emerging independent writers, because we have to prove ourselves that we can write exactly the same thing and still have difficult time getting into that club. But that shouldn't stop you. That shouldn't stop you. You can, for example, adapt one of your novels into a script. I think that's a really good approach, because I adapted recently a book, World War II story, that I found on Amazon. I liked the book, and I found the writer through email. and the book had really good reviews on Amazon. Wasn't a New York bestseller, but had a pretty good reviews on Amazon, and I was interested in the subject. I know a lot about history. I'm interested in history, so I said, okay, this would be something maybe pretty good to adopt for the first time. Let me adopt something. And the writer gave me an option meaning when the writer gives you a contract that says that you are allowed to do that for a certain period of time, and usually for a year and a half, and then after that you can extend that option. And if you are still in a good relationship with that writer, even if the movie doesn't happen in 3 or 4 or 5 years, you still obviously will register that adaptation, and maybe one day, years later, I'm hoping to, that might become a movie, you know. It's never too late. I mean, it's a historical drama. It's always there. It always can be told, yeah. So adaptation is something that, especially people who are already writers and wrote something like a novel, should look into it. I mean, because you already have a story that you know very well. Okay, maybe 300, 400 pages, doesn't work. Maybe for the TV series too. You might say, wow, there is so much material here. I can make a mini series, maybe 4, 5, 6 episodes, or I can make a full 13 episodes, depending how much material you have there, you know. Maybe it's an open ending and can go forever, you know, which would be wonderful, because now if it actually goes well that first season, you will be a millionaire then, you know, because it will go on and on. But how do you get to that point? It's a golden question. Well, how? How do I sell my script? That's the biggest question that is in every screenwriting group on social media. It pops up every 10 minutes, you know. How do I sell a script? And what the funniest thing is, the people who write that, they put it in that, how do you call that thing, like a colorful background and thing. How do I sell my script? And then usually it's misspelled, you know. So the comments are, well, if you improve your spelling, you might be able 20 years from now to sell the script. But how do I sell my script? Well, I'll give you a straight answer. You can't really sell your script without having a representation, without having an agent. And that agent should, or that's their job, will push your script into the hands of people who might have power and money to make it into a movie. It's not like it was in the 70s and the 80s, where we had 100 times or 1,000 times less screenwriters, because not everybody knew how to become a screenwriter. There was no digital application such as Final Draft or anything else. So people had to actually type on a typewriter back in the 70s, even in the 80s, you know. So not everybody was excited. Oh, I'm like so excited to write a 100-page screenplay now. No. So it was actually easier to break into this industry in the 60s and 70s and even 80s. In the 90s, it started changing so rapidly, you know, and 1,000 times more people jumped on it, and now it's a huge competition, and even agents and managers, you know, they can't handle that. So they will just pick and choose certain people they will represent. Photographers usually have 15, 20 fantastic images, that's their portfolio. Cinematographers, they have a demo reel that's fantastic, they shot so much stuff, and they show 2-3 minute clips of fantastic video or film. Screenwriters have a portfolio of written scripts. So I would say at least 3 feature scripts, 5 or 6 short scripts, maybe a pilot for the TV show, TV series. That's a pretty good portfolio right there. There's a little package, and then self-marketing, self-publicity, submission to script contests, very important too, because there are many script contests out there. And I always tell my students, don't waste time on everything. If you go on submission platforms such as filmfreeway.com, which is now pretty much the main platform for submissions of films and scripts, you will see so many script contests, and they all charge money, a lot of money actually. For some reason, script contests are more expensive than film contests. contests because they figured there might be more screenwriters out there than actual filmmakers, independent screenwriters. So they charge $30, $40, $50, and it doesn't guarantee anything. There are scam contests there too, so you have to be very, very careful. What I do usually, I narrow down to maybe 10 or 15 script contests. I submit my work too, because I trust these. They've been around for years. They are recommended by industry professionals. I've been at some of those and I've seen those people. I've been at Screencrafts, I've been at a few other ones, and when you go there, you actually see the real people, some managers, some agents, and some people from the industry, and you know it's a real contest. It's not something that will just take your money and nothing's gonna happen after that. So once you, again, have a really good finished script, and you say, wow, this is really good, I think this is really good, start submitting it to these contests. There are 4 or 5 that absolutely you should submit to. Austin, Page, Nicole Fellowship, how to organize yourself, write constantly. I know people have full-time jobs, people are not always in the mood to write, but you have to sort of set up certain time, even if it's only 2-3 hours a week, where you're gonna sit down and type up maybe 10 pages. And in about 4, 5, 6 weeks, you might have a very rough draft, okay? But then it will improve. You will go to this second draft, and then again, it takes months. Once you polish it and then you proofread it and maybe give it to some people to read. And now, big red flag, big warning on giving people to read your script. Pay attention who you give to your script to read. Don't give to your significant other. Why? Because they'll pat you on the shoulder and say you are the best writer in the world. Okay? Don't give to your friends. Don't give to your friends, because your friends are your friends, and they always also say they're not going to even read it. They'll just say it. Oh, that was fantastic. That's the best thing I ever read. They probably don't even read it. You have to give it to other screenwriters, 1-for-1. So you offer somebody to read their script, in return they'll read your script. And screenwriters will read, because if I give it to somebody, to read my script, I'm curious how, what's their quality. I want to read it, and I'll give you a feedback. I'll tell you, yes, this is good, but I would do this differently. And then you will really get constructive criticism, constructive feedback, not just you're the best, but maybe you should improve a little bit on this and a little bit of this, or maybe this should be a little bit different. And that's a peer review, much better than a friend review, okay? So Coverfly became hot in the last couple of years, coverfly.com. They have a selection of maybe 30, 40 contests. They are strictly endorsed by Coverfly and some industry insiders, and they created this system of points. So, for example, if your script places into quarterfinals or semifinals of some of these that they endorse, you will get certain number of points, and on their website, your script actually will be listed as having 400, 500 points and being the 6th or 7th in horror subgenre of some kind. Well, you got recognized somehow. Somebody actually put your title and your name there and saying, look, maybe somebody should pay attention to this list and this list and this list. So take a look at Coverfly. Again, I'm not endorsing any of these. I don't work for any of them. Those are things I use myself. I write and I have a portfolio of scripts, and I also wonder, okay, where should I submit next? I like competitions. I like submitting all the time my films and my scripts. And I'm very careful because I don't want to waste money. So these are the ones I use too, reputable ones that actually mean something and have some kind of reputation, okay? And that can possibly get you representation, possibly they can get you a manager or an agent. And if you are lucky to get to that point, to get an agent, their job is to make it happen for you, because they will get a percentage if it does happen. So people who work in that business, they are very careful and they are very serious. So if they take you as a client, they will actually actively search for somebody who will take that script and possibly push it into some kind of development. Development meaning it's even before pre-production. Development meaning, okay, let's take this wonderful script and possibly look for an executive producer who might be interested to look for possible financing and look for interested star to be in it. Again, long development process, but once you enter that development process, you are already on the road to be super successful with that script, you know, and hopefully it will become a movie. Again, takes 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you know. Nothing happens fast. You have to actively search either for a presentation, for a rich guy called executive producer who doesn't have to know anything about filmmaking. If you have I'll give you an example. When I was at the graduate school at Chapman University, we had a guest speaker, which is a producer from LA who produced some movies. And the first thing the person said is, next time I see you guys, I want you to bring to a meeting your lawyers, your doctors, rich family members, and we will make a movie. That was it, you know. And then you are wondering, well, is that all about that? Well, yes, it is. It is about that because it's very expensive and/or, okay. Now, let's not make it all about money. Independent, micro-budget filmmaking in Cleveland. I'm very familiar with it. I've been doing it for 15, 16 years. I would encourage everybody, like you already did, to work on local films. If you never worked on it, but you intend to become a screenwriter, you should just go there to see what it takes to make a movie. Even if it's only 2 days, even if it's a weekend, 48 hours, do it. Do it to see how difficult it could be and how those pages can translate or can't translate to a film. Sometimes it can't. Sometimes what you wrote might be very expensive or difficult to make, you know. And then you'll have a really good idea how to write for certain budgets, okay? How to write for certain budgets. So if you say, for example, well, I'll write this amazing sci-fi film that can cost $100 million. I will, because I have a great idea. But at the same time, I'll work on a low budget, ultra low budget drama that also can be a fantastic script and can be done for $100,000. So diversify in that way too. Then an agent, when it takes you, might say, well, what do you have? Do you have some ultra low budgets? Or you have only these $50, $100 million? So, oh, I have ultra low budget comedy. I have one here, I'll give you as a gift, that can be done on 1 or 2 locations. Locations meaning money. If it's only 1, 2 locations, some houses, and everything is a really, really good characters and dialogue. Ultra low budget film. Ultra low budget doesn't mean bad, doesn't mean poor. It means it can be produced inexpensively, but it can become a money-making machine too, like a film called Paranormal Activity from a few years ago. Was apparently done on a budget of less than $20,000 by people who clearly didn't have any credits, because I remember and I looked up. I was curious and I said, who are these people? They probably made up this story. And I look up on IMDb and on Google, nobody knows who they are. And all of a sudden they become millionaires, you know. But they were really good in marketing too, you know. Marketing again. Sizzle really mentioned, you know. Concept trailer, teaser. You can do this too. Very inexpensively. There is a little camera right there. Everybody has that. You can buy on Amazon this thing, $20, and you can put camera on it. You can now go and make a movie. Seriously, you can. I just shot a scene the other day with an actor for my new pilot, and I used a real big camera, but my second camera was an iPhone, and I secured it there. So I wanted a coverage, and it has a fantastic picture, and especially if it's used for certain shots that have that type of look. Now you can do that. You are writing, let's say, a feature film, and it would be good to have some type of a teaser or a concept sizzle reel. It could be only 60 seconds or 2 minutes, not more than that. You can make it from stock footage and stock sound. There is a site called pond5.com, pond5.com. There are numerous sites that give royalty-free music, or you can pay very, very minimal fees to obtain a nice original soundtrack that could be 60 seconds, and you can use it. You can get on Pond5, you can find 4 or 5 video clips that relate to your story. I found on Pond5 4 or 5 clips, each one maybe 6 or 7 or 10 seconds, that have certain images that heavily relate to my horror script that I wrote. And I put some royalty-free music to it, I put some title there, and I have a 60-second little sizzle or a teaser for non-existing film. And actually when you see it, you are like, oh, is this out? No, it doesn't exist. It's just to tease you, tell you that I'm writing some stuff, and I use it for my personal publicity. Highly recommend it. You can do that. You can totally do that. So besides being very disciplined and writing constantly, besides being organized and writing in a certain order, meaning idea, outline, treatment, script, first draft, second draft, polishing, besides being very proactive in sending to script contests, also pay attention to your self-publicity, the self-marketing, meaning presence on IMDb.com. I just did a lecture at Indie Gathering Festival on IMDb, $15 a month. I can write it off. I have an LLC, sole member LLC. I can write it off as a marketing expense. But it allows me, IMDb Pro allows me to put my picture there, to put all my scripts that I actually wrote. I can list on IMDb, and I can put there on my log line, what's the script about, I want this, and this. That's my self-publicity, okay? Because if I really contact some manager or some agent, they want to see who am I, Because I can't pick up a phone because I would scare them with this English, okay? And they would immediately think I'm, from some shady organization from Eastern Europe. So they're not gonna talk to me, okay? I have to come up with other ways to contact these people and show the link to my IMDb Pro, the link to my teaser reels, the link to my previous work, and then they'll see, oh, okay, this person is serious. Okay, let me maybe take a look at one of your scripts. So you also can do that. It's not that expensive, and it doesn't take that much time.